Welcome back to Penguin Classics On Air. Well, speaking about trigger issues, we noted that Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is a repeat offender,
Right.
and it's been on the list of top 20 banned books over this past decade.
Right.
So why have readers found this so offensive?
Huckleberry Finn is a book that is a depiction of the world at the time, or of that area, that part of the country, that part of the U.S., at the time that Twain wrote it. And the language that he used, particularly talking about using the word nigger, which is a trigger issue for many people. Many African Americans find as a thought of their children reading that book and encountering that word, even though when Mark Twain used that word, it was in common usage and didn't have the connotations that it has today. They find that, on behalf of their children, extremely distressing. And you can find it's not just African Americans, and it's not just that book. When you look at many of Agatha Christie's early books or Dorothy Sayers' novels, those books that are set in England, for example, in the 1920s and the 1930s, there's a lot of very, very casual anti-Semitism that's thrown around in there. Now, as far as I know, nobody's ever suggested banning Agatha Christie or Dorothy Sayers, but
Yes.
that could partly be because they're considered genre writers, and therefore, in this unfortunate scale that we have, less important than literary classics.
Which banned classics are you most surprised by in terms of the challenges that come up against the books?
Well, I think that one of the ones that I find the saddest, because I think it really is one of the great American novels, is John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. And others of John Steinbeck's books were also banned as well, or huge complaints about them. But The Grapes of Wrath, I think, is one of those novels that you just don't want people to live their life without having read. In many ways, it has everything that you would want from a novel: great characters, well-developed characters, a great story. The setting is just depicted impeccably, and John Steinbeck was a very, very, very beautiful writer. So that's the main one, I think. But I'm amazed that the J.K. Rowling Harry Potter books are among the most argued against books in the community, the communities that don't like the witchcraft in there. And with every single banned book, there's a different complaint that could be made about it. There's a wonderful T-shirt that says, "There's something in my library to offend everyone."
That's great.
And yeah, isn't that wonderful? And I think that you could add a little codicil to that and say if it wouldn't be a library or a bookstore if that were not the case.
What other modern works now are being challenged or banned that you predict will be our future great classics?
I think that we're going to see the Harry Potter books banned for years and years to come, and I think they are modern classics. And it's interesting. It's a bit interesting to me that The Hobbit, for example, as far as I know, was never challenged, or The Lord of the Rings, and why? Whether that's because they're set in another world, and because the Harry Potter books, of course, are set in a world that we can identify as our own, with a little bit of magic thrown in. So I think that you're going to find books that deal with difficult issues in teenagers' lives that have been challenged by people. I think the picture books like Heather Has Two Mommies, that is consistently challenged in libraries and schools. Those kinds of things, those books are going to grow up, are going to become classics because they were the first of their kind.
And what are your top favorite banned classics that you'd recommend to our Penguin Classics listeners?
Well, the main one, I think, is The Grapes of Wrath. I think that just goes without saying. And then all of the other John Steinbeck books I would absolutely agree with as well. I mean, first of all, I always think if they're a Penguin classic that you should read them anyway, whether they're banned or not. I mean, I always think that that's a good way to pick out books that way. But Arthur Miller's plays, for example, I mean, I could see people complaining about The Crucible, and a lot of these complaints or challenges to the book don't ever get filed, don't ever get sent to the people who are compiling the list. Instead, what they're doing, you know, they'll talk to the head of the library, and the head of the library will say, I mean, one of the complaints frequently is, why would you buy this book? We have none of these people, whatever these people are, in our community, or this will give our children wrong ideas. And then I think the librarian's task is to help the parent understand that reading books that are distressing, that do contain those trigger issues, are possibly also the best times to be able to talk about those issues and to explain that there are different ways of looking at those issues. But I think religion is always going to be a trigger. I think that's why the Satanic Verses was so scary. I think many people at that time didn't really understand how deep that sense of outrage when you feel your religion is being devalued can be.
Well, thank you so much, Nancy, for talking with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
This program is brought to you by Penguin Books, the publishers of Penguin 75. High standards in art and design have always been a part of Penguin's publishing program. Now, on the occasion of Penguin's 75th anniversary, longtime art director Paul Buckley has chosen 75 covers that represent the best of what Penguin has produced over the course of the last decade. This gives readers a rare behind-the-scenes glimpse into the complex creation of a book's cover. Penguin 75, available now from Penguin Books.